all I know is that I have a lot of pain, and the script that we're all being fed and that I've been fed for so long is not working, and that men and boys are not doing okay right now.
Yeah. So what do you think it means to be a good man? What?
My name is Johnny Cole, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Hey Brother Co. We are a men's work organization that builds and equips men with emotional skills and builds community for men to unlearn patriarchal masculinity and to become embodied community leaders. And that's a mouthful, but what that breaks down to is I and my team of leaders have a vision that we want a world where boys and men are free to express themselves exactly how they want to, and that there is no rigid box or a set of unknown or background rules that dictate our behavior. I want a world where men and boys can truly be themselves authentically, whether that's in how we dress, how we speak, how we walk, how we play, how we love, all of these things. I think there's very, very, very few men who are able to walk through life unencumbered by the weight of masculine expectations. And so that's mainly the work that I do now. That's my company that I just founded part-time. Or not part-time, I'm doing it full-time, but I also have a full-time job in the tech space. So I work 9 to 5 as a tech bro, as a consultant at an AI chatbot company. And I got into this work. I'm 25. I am from Cleveland, Ohio, and my entire family's from South Africa. But I got into this work because in college I was really passionate about gender-based violence. I had a lot of women friends growing up, friends who were girls, strong mom and sister, and so I started noticing that a lot of women who were close to me would disclose to me experiences of assault or coercive sexual experience with other boys that I was on the soccer team with or basketball or whatever. And so I kind of noticed that there was something happening behind the scenes with men and boys, and about women and towards women. And so I just kind of made that like a focus of mine. And in college, I was part of an organization called Men Opposing Violence Everywhere. And we did like sexual assault prevention education for every incoming cohort of fraternity class. Had to, like, it was a 15 group or 15 guy pledge class, had to take a course with me on, what exactly is at the time toxic masculinity, and what is rape culture, and how do we encourage sexual violence implicitly on college campuses, things like that. And then during my last year of college, I took a gender studies course, a year of gender studies coursework actually, and ended up interning and then working at a domestic violence center. And so that really exposed me to direct service of vulnerable populations who are affected by what I believe to be like a very deep masculine wound, like the presence of violence in our homes and our communities is at the hands of men towards other men, towards boys, towards children, towards women, is because of what I feel is a really deep masculine wound, and anyway, I'll pause there. I don't know how
Well,
articulate.
no, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, and for all the work and furthering this discussion. And it's nice to talk to someone like aligned and working for a similar type of cause, and getting more comfortable and well adjusted and vulnerable men who are not taking place in the kind of larger system of violence. So thank you for sharing all that. I'm curious, and I guess on two dimensions now, both you personally and in the way that you work with other men in your business. Like, what does masculinity mean to you now? And I guess for starting with you personally, like, what does masculinity mean to you now, and where do you think you've learned that from?
Yeah, great question. I think as I am today, masculinity to me is edging closer and closer towards full confidence in myself. So aligning the words that I say with the actions that I do, and closing that gap. And that can look like a lot of different things. So if it means I want to be really good at calisthenics and I want to feel really strong and I like climbing trees and I want to improve my physical ability to do something that gives me joy, then to me that is a masculine pursuit. My desire to be an emotional support system and a financial provider for my mother, my sister, to me that feels like part of my masculine core. If it means that I want to wear super bright colors or paint this mural on my wall that has pinks and lavenders, then that's what it means to me, being creative and being confident in how I want to express myself. However, where I learned masculinity from was from society, from movies, and from an abusive father who used physical violence to control and influence the world around him. So I actually grew up with this idea that real men hurt people in order to get what they wanted, and real men prioritized asserting themselves over others, and that domination was a key aspect of how you expressed your masculinity. And that was really a measure of how manly you were, is if you could make other people do stuff or feel stuff. And I don't believe that anymore. I'm still trying to unlearn it, because I have some, I think, some resonant wounds with feeling inhibited in self-expression. So I also think that masculinity is something that's really socially contextual, because if you go into, I don't know, like an indigenous tribe in Southern Africa, and some of the rites of passage and rituals that they have to go through to demonstrate, a boy going through to a man, look very different than how we in the United States, in the Western world, or even in European countries, like all over the world, how we define masculinity is different because it's a social set of qualities. There's nothing particularly innate. In the 1700s in France, pink was one of the most like masculine colors, right? And like men wore high heels. And now that changes. And now Republicans hate drag queens and men who wear high heels. So it really just depends on the society and the time that we're in, which behaviors and qualities we deem to be masculine. And I think a lot of the ones that as a society we define don't make me feel good these days, and don't necessarily make me feel like I'm being truthful, kind, emotionally authentic. So yeah, I'd say just being authentic and being myself and encouraging others to do so. That's what feels masculine to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's so well said. And I mean, and I love, it's such a privilege to be in my position to hear different perspectives. And I don't think I've heard it quite phrased like that, where closing the gap between what you say and what you intend with your actions. And I love that it's such a like flexible and dynamic take on masculinity, and ties it so authentically to your goals in life, which is really cool and healthy. So I love that. And sometimes when I'm going, I'm thinking, okay, like that's a cool minute. I love that. So that's awesome. And then I also think you mentioned like looking at other cultures and how do they look at masculinity, other time periods, how do they look at masculinity, and recognizing that the social context is another key thing, I think, to anchor masculinity to yourself and not some highly in flux time period or place that may have its own rules for masculinity. You also mentioned unlearning where you originally learned masculinity. I'm curious if there's anything helpful you could share maybe to others hoping to work through the same kind of thing, whether there was like self-care or access to certain resources that were super helpful in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking that. One of the things that's been very impactful for me in the past year has been starting a men's work practice and finding a community of men that I can feel supported by, feel encouraged by, motivated by, and have pushed me to be my best self. I define men's work as any organized activity for a man's self-development, betterment, healing, especially if that activity is done in a collective with other men. So if you're just hanging out with your buddies and the main way that you socialize and organize with other men is drinking beers and watching the game, playing video games, going to the gym, kind of doing an activity. And sometimes you talk, but there isn't a whole lot of like disclosure and what are your values? What motivates you? What kind of man do you want to be? If there isn't reflection on that and reflection on your experience with the end goal of developing to a better version of yourself, then I don't think that's serving us entirely. And I believe that we need other groups of men, like just as we've seen with a more progressive culture, an emphasis on solidarity spaces. So like safe spaces for queer people, for Black people, for women, like solidarity spaces of a same homogenous group are very important, but we don't have that for men. And I realized that even on the sports teams that I played on, it was centered around doing some sort of activity, and it also involved a lot of like that, locker room talk, or a lot of these patriarchally masculine norms. Whether it was how we spoke about one another, the language we used about what we're going to do to the other team, and like all this stuff. It wasn't actually for the collective, like values nourishment and advancement of life mission, and so that's been super helpful to me. So I'll say starting a men's work practice to learn to trust men, trust their judgment, and pick some guys that motivate you and you admire and that you genuinely want to be around. And if you come from a background where maybe in your home as a child you had some harmful, scary views of masculinity, or maybe if you were abused, it wasn't your fault. And the strongest thing that you can do is be deliberate with your gentleness, because I think how a lot of men would get together and agree what masculinity means to them is like protecting people, doing the right thing, maybe. However, that is really contradictory to some of what we do in our personal lives then, right? Like the idea that we need to be the bigger and stronger and one up other people, and that there's this hierarchy and I need to tease someone else just to assert my place here. And starting men's work, having more male friends, that'll definitely help.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up. I was working on something for our blog, and it was describing one of the like root causes of loneliness in older men, especially, was the foundation of male friendships being centered on experiences, and the foundation for a greater foundation in female friendships centered on emotional learning and discussion. It was really helpful to like kind of investigate my own male friendships, and you can see the difference between the friend that you will only see for the activity, or the one that can come over and talk when you actually need help. And it's so important to have close male friends that are on a deeper level, that just getting together to watch the same team that you like, and there's no discussion beyond the surface level. So I think that is a really good point to share and reemphasize, as well as finding a community of like-minded men. Like you said, there aren't a lot of spaces dedicated to that. I'm curious, what is so what kind of space how are you working on right now? Like how do you, I'm curious for myself too, like how do you facilitate that gathering, and kind of set the space for that kind of sharing, and maybe break down some hesitation in like sharing or getting discussion going? What is creating that space like?
Yeah, I first and foremost try to set a precedent of vulnerability. So I try to demonstrate exactly what it is that I'm looking for. So I created this space. I created Hey Brother Co. By leading my first ever healthy masculinity retreat last summer. So I was at a point in my life where I felt very disconnected from a lot of other men, and I realized I didn't have a group of men that I felt I could rely on. And I hadn't spoken to my father in about 3 years now. That's 4. And I was feeling this sense of lack and kind of sorry for myself. Like, I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wish I had like where are the good men in my life? And it was, I've been sitting in that space for a while, and then I thought to myself, well, I actually do know a lot of really wonderful men on an individual level. The problem is that none of them know each other, and none of us get together. And so, what if I could make that happen? And what if I could get a group of guys together where I could tell them a little bit about what I had been feeling, and maybe even get some of them to understand me a little bit better and understand one another, and how beautiful that could be. Because up until that point, I was 24. I felt that I had been doing a lot of emotional labor for most of my male friends in my life. Like, even the most sensitive guys, like in high school and in college, who I felt were closer to where I was emotionally, at a certain point, they would demonstrate to me that they could code switch very easily back into like how they were around a group of other guys, and how they treated me versus how they were just one-on-one was very different. And so I had this constant feeling of kind of like betrayal almost. Um, but I digress to say that I invited 9 men from around the country, none of whom knew each other. Most of them were friends and acquaintances from college. Some of them had been just, post-college friends, and sight unseen, they all flew to Minneapolis, where an hour away, I had rented out a cabin on the Mississippi River. And we did an entire weekend where I curated a curriculum of screening the film, The Mask You Live In, which is a wonderful documentary about the Representation Project. We did yoga. We did some really cool like spike ball competitions and kayaking on the river and play, like just playing and being whimsical. We had guided meditations, breath work, somatic experience for somatic release. And we also did guided journal prompts where, for example, asking the question, all right, we're going to take 10 minutes. What does being a man mean to you? And have people write down and then share in small groups afterwards. And then we also did some more edgy, like intimate stuff, like eye gazing, like I challenge you to look another man in the eyes for 2 minutes and like see him, like witness who he is. And so that was a revolutionary experience that changed my life. And to that day, now I lead that group of guys. Every Sunday, we have a virtual men's circle where we check in, we greet and ground with some breath work, center ourselves, and then we spend 90 minutes talking about either some moving chapters of whatever book we're reading. Right now, it's Bell Hooks' The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. Or we just have a somatic like breathwork ceremony for 90 minutes, or we do talk about what's going on in our lives. What stresses are we feeling? So I'll go back to saying the precedent of vulnerability is just to be vulnerable here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 25. I do not have it figured out. I don't know what it means to be like a real man or a good man. And I don't regularly have men older than 40 that I speak to. So all I know is that I have a lot of pain, and the script that we're all being fed and that I've been fed for so long is not working, and that men and boys are not doing okay right now. And if I am going to respect myself and have compassion for my lived experience as a boy and as a man, then I need to extend that out to other boys and men and try to do something about it so that I can get my needs met selfishly, and have the type of men in my life that I've always needed, and then also be that kind of man for others. Because yeah, what's happening right now is not working, and I've lost friends to death by suicide. I've got a lot of friends who have just been struggling kind of silently for too long, and what it comes down to is not having the skills, like literally the emotional skills, to know how to express oneself properly. And that's, I believe, a huge disconnect as well, where men feel very attacked and targeted by people who are frustrated and saying, look, well, men are emotionally inadequate, and like men can't express themselves, and men can't do this, and men are doing all these bad things, and it's hard to, well, I'm trying, I don't know how. Right. So what do we do?
Yeah.
We have to get together and train ourselves and like literally build the skills. And I would love to elaborate more on what I mean by like the skills of emotional regulation and being an emotionally skilled man. But yeah, creating that space has been super beautiful, and it's way easier than you think when you're the first one to set the precedent and let your guard down and just be like, I don't know, I don't think I'm being a good brother or a son right now. Like, I have no idea. I feel a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, and beautiful is, I mean, that's the right word for it, as you were kind of painting the picture of the weekend, and it's beautiful. And it's the kind of thing that it wouldn't be uh if you're describing that as like a weekend or a getaway for women, it doesn't it's more like accepted as like, oh yeah, it's just their friends are going to like do some self-care, and but it's not as common in the male community. And so I think it's so cool that you kind of addressed a lack in your own life, and there's kind of a, I think there's a decision point at that point where I think there's an unhealthy reaction and kind of waging war against that. I'm missing this, I'm frustrated, and there's like unhealthy ways to react, and you kind of addressed the issue for yourself and then expanded it to offer it to others. And so I, as you were saying, talking about that, I was just thinking like what an amazing community like offering. And so I'm curious, just for like our own collaboration, like I would love to share that resource, because I'm sure, I mean, I don't know your capacity, but I'm sure there are so many men in our followers who are really desiring community and access to the tools, because there is that learning, like you were talking about, expressing yourself as a man. And I think exposure to the right language is so important, to put some words to the feelings and the pain and the struggle. And I think it takes being exposed to those healthy spaces to gather that language. And because it is hard. I mean, I work in this space all the time, and I trip over my words and say the wrong thing all the time, but it's so helpful and necessary to practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to find a way to either incorporate that in like our resources section of our website, or incorporate it in how we share the post, all of course pending your capacity and desire
Yeah.
for more people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love and encourage any collaboration that we can do. And what we do at Hey Brother Co now is I lead that weekly men's group on Sundays, which is kind of an invite-only circle, which is slowly building from the original cohort. And then I also lead a monthly free men's group. Both of these are free offerings. The second Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock Eastern. And I'll share the link to register for that through my website. But I host a 2-hour men's group once a month for the Hey Brother Co community to get together, meet one another. And the last 2 months that we've done it have been some sort of educational topic. So it'll be kind of seminar style for the first portion, and then it'll lead into group discussion. So once we're all working from the common framework and identifying some of the topics, the first month that I did this, we covered the men's isolation epidemic and some of the causes of the lack of community for men and what we can do about it. And then we had group discussion on that. And then most recently, 2 weeks ago or a week ago now, it was masculinity and sex, and identifying like, how do we learn about sex as boys? How do we learn about our own bodies? How do we learn about the way that we interact with sexual partners? What are some of the places we learn that from? Is it school, parents, church? Pornography? Like where are we getting some of these messages, and how do they affect us as adults? So we go through topics like that, and then as always, we ground and we check in with breath work, and we check out with breath work every time. So I'd be happy to share some of that information. I am expanding out to start teaching specific, as you're talking about, verticals, subjects. For example, I want to create a curriculum for harmful models of masculinity in the media, where I want to specifically draw examples from Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, and other folks who I believe are net detrimental to men's well-being, but they have a huge male following who think that they are a good model. And I want to dissect that and have discussion around that. And then I want to do another course that's, I've only done this privately for friends, but when I say somatic, I mean relating to the body rather than the mind, a somatic release ceremony to get men to feel comfortable crying, which I know sounds a little edgy, but through guided breath work, I've been able to facilitate men who haven't been able to cry for months or years, to have that release. And we can do it virtually, and you can be camera off if you want. You don't have to show, but I it's very important to me to allow men to release some of the cortisol in our tear ducts and the stress hormone, and so that's another thing that I offer through Hey Brother Co. And I haven't even talked about some of the corporate stuff or in the schools that I do, but yeah, there. So please do share anything and everything related to Hey Brother Co. I would love to have more men join what it is that I'm doing and learn a little bit more about themselves.
Awesome. I mean, it's such good alignment, and yours is so hands-on and educational. I think it's a really nice complement to kind of the like the super broad, just kind of awareness piece where we're at, where people can kind of just scroll conversations, but we don't have that deeper layer, of like, hey, come join us for 2 hours and really learn about this topic. I just so appreciate you sharing and just the work that you do. And yeah, it was just really nice to meet you.
Likewise, Henry, I really appreciate your time and the platform that you're creating. I know that you do have quite, I mean, it's grown, and there's a lot of men that are looking at your guys's content and engaging with it, and myself included. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And
100%.
the work that you guys are doing. Can't wait to collaborate further.
Yeah. So what do you think it means to be a good man?
I don't think there's a single definition.
Things that make up a good man are just things that make up a good person. Someone who's honest, someone who's decent.
You're also willing to express yourself in a healthy way, and you're in touch with your emotions as well.